everybody. Welcome back. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and most importantly, happy birthday to my cousin Brian. You should have told me. So, we are going to have a great show today. I'm Danya.
I'm Brian.
And meet Mr. Melvin Collier, guys.
Hello.
This is awesome. You guys just don't know. Like, I'm so excited because I remember the first time that I contacted you on Our Black Ancestor because I was so blown that I'd seen you on Who Do You Think You Are with Spike Lee. And I saw that and I looked at my mother. I was like, oh my God, I'm in the same group with Melvin Collier. So yeah, you were my first celebrity genealogist.
Oh, you call me a celebrity.
Yeah, that's what you were to me. I mean, now I'm your colleague, but it's just like you were my first celebrity genealogist.
Well, I'm honored you said that.
Yeah, I was very excited.
But I don't want to be a celebrity. I'll make that.
None of us do.
Yeah.
So Brian, let's talk about what's up for today.
I was going to leave you to do the introductions.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, today we're talking to Melvin about and I was not able to pull up the name of the article, but Melvin wrote this awesome article. For those that don't know, Melvin is the founder of Roots Revealed blog. Very, very great blog that tells you all different kinds of stories, and he gives you information about how to find your family within a story, which he helped me again, Martha Brooks, with my great-great-grandmother. If you had not wrote in one of your articles about how the 1860 and the 1850 census, they do the families in groups, it never dawned on me to look at it like that. And it was because of that particular article, when you did that, I was looking at it like, oh, okay, well, let me go back and look. And sure enough, there was my great-great-grandmother with her entire family. And once she was with her family, I was able to find everybody. So I went back further because of that. And it was in that particular article that helped me. So now you've written another article that is actually introducing DNA and how you found a family of people. Am I correct?
That's correct. My blog post from last month in December was Genealogy Repairs a Dismantled Family.
Right.
And so I've been researching since 1993. I was able to get back to my third great grandmother. Her name was Peggy Milam. So I was able to find out who the last enslaver was. In that particular case, the last enslaver's widow was 2 households down. And he was the only man with that surname in the county. So it was easy to determine exactly who the last slaveholder was. So, and you have to do some research on the slave owner as well. So I was able to ascertain that he had migrated from Alabama to Mississippi. So, but however, my third great grandmother was from Tennessee. So that, in genealogy, you make some educated theories or hypotheses.
Yes.
So one of my hypotheses was, okay, she was from Tennessee, whereas my great-great-great-grandfather was from Alabama. It just seems like, okay, maybe the last slaveholder purchased her from somewhere. So my question was, how can I trace back to her origins? What are her origins? She was in the 1870 census, the head of household, had kids in the house, and I just didn't know anything about her. Where did the Milam family? How did the Milam family obtain this? This Tennessee-born ancestor of mine, right? Whereas they came from Alabama. So one of the strategies I used was, okay, Melvin, see if you can find out what the family considered her maiden name to be. And that may give you some clues as to tracing back her family. Right. So she had like 12 kids. I was able to find the death certificate of like 4 of her kids. And on 2 of the death certificates, they mentioned a different maiden name for her. One of them said that her maiden name was Margaret Briscoe. And another one said that her maiden name was Margaret Warren. So I was like, okay, they're confused about what a maiden name was, but oftentimes that confusion may lead to something.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to consider there's something going on here why some people say Briscoe, while the informant say Briscoe and another informant says Warren. Mm-hmm. So I just started researching, and I did not find anybody with that surname within the county. So, another strategy is research the neighboring counties.
Right.
So, Marshall County was like 10 to 15 miles away. And I knew that the slave owner, he had family over in Marshall County. So I said, you form these, like I said, you form these theories. I said, well, it's plausible to assert that, maybe, while going over to Marshall County, he may have purchased an enslaved person and brought him 10 miles over into the next county.
Right.
Because, his father was over there in Marshall County. I mean, his brothers were all over in Marshall County. He was the only one that moved to Tate County. So I decided to concentrate on Marshall County since I didn't have any luck with Tate County. And lo and behold, I decided to go down to the Mississippi Department of Archives. Mm-hmm. And I pulled the Marshall County probate records. And I was like, okay, maybe I can find some type of record, maybe like a bill of sale or something that, showing where Joseph Milam purchased, Margaret from either a Briscoe or a Warren. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the theories I was working on. So I'm scrolling the microfilm. I see the surname Briscoe and Warren all through, and I'm reading the property deeds. Mm-hmm. And within all those property deeds, there was this a bill of sale. A man named Edward Warren was essentially selling 6 slaves to his cousin, who was a Briscoe. And I was like, okay, this is something. Mm-hmm. And then among those 6 enslaved people was a Margaret, which is the official name for Peggy.
Right.
And the age match, some of the names of the other enslaved people that was listed in the family group, were names that were kept passed down in my family. And I was like, wait a minute, so I started putting 2 and 2 together. I was like, wait a minute,
that's her.
Yeah, that's her. Immediately, I'm sitting there like, chills going through my body. I'm sitting at a microfilm now.
Might not start crying a little
bit.
I'm
like, this got to be her because look at all of the pieces that are falling together. But I needed that proof, so I always believed it was her, and then DNA hit the scene. So, and now I started tracing some of those people that was listed, in that family group in that 1839 deed. Sure enough, they were coming up as DNA matches. Some of a brother ended up in Marshall County. He was never taken away, whereas my great grandmother was taken over to the next county about 20 miles away, and then some of them ended up in Arkansas. So all of the people started taking these DNA tests. And I have the information before me to identify, who Grandma Peggy's siblings were and parents.
Right.
So these are my 4th great-grandparents as well that was listed in their deed. Mm-hmm. So all the DNA started coming in. I started researching the trees of these DNA matches and were able to link them back to the siblings. And that's how I was able to use DNA to put her family tree back together.
Right.
She was separated from her parents and her siblings. A brother ended up staying in the county of Marshall County, whereas she had several siblings that were taken to Arkansas. But we were all sharing DNA, shared matches with each other.
Wow.
So it was obvious. So when I wrote that post in December, I said, okay, this is a good case. It's a very good case. So I had written about it before when I found one of her brothers. And I said, I'm going to put all of this together, show how descendants of each, 3 of her siblings are sharing DNA with my mother, my aunt, and my uncle, and then how all of us are, connected. So I said that'll be an excellent case to put on my blog. So
and it was.
Yeah.
So I wish that the guy that Donnie and I were having a Twitter conversation on, I'm going to call it a Twitter conversation, could have either listened to this bit or have read your article.
Yes.
Because he was of the opinion that Black people couldn't do their genealogy because of slavery.
Uh-huh. I hear that all the time, and that bothers me sometimes when I read articles that essentially state that African Americans can't trace their family roots before 1870, or it's extremely rare That bothers me. I mean, I think one thing we both know that there's a certain level of difficulty in doing it, but it's definitely not impossible.
Not impossible.
It's
Yes.
you just got to hone on those clues,
It's not
employ the right methodologies, and just don't give up. And then
and think outside of the box.
yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what our kind of community of black researchers have been trying to do for a long time. Because you have us, you have Black Pro Gen, you have Angela Walton Raji, you have all of these
Bernie
people,
Bennett.
Bennett, you have all of these, black genealogists out there sharing our wisdom, sharing our strategies. Because there is no easy way to do it.
No.
Because enslaved people didn't all experience, even though they all experienced being enslaved,
Right.
their experiences within slavery were very different.
Yes.
So you're always having to think outside of the box. Where can I find their footprints? Where can I start picking up their trail?
Exactly.
And that's what I loved about the workshop that you had that you did that's posted online. I think I can't remember where it is, but you have to be a member.
Oh, okay.
To,
The webinar. I think I did
webinar.
that like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of the article that you wrote was almost like an update of that webinar.
Yeah. With slave ancestral research, you basically have to look for clues in research and make reasonable theories or hypotheses as to okay, I want to try to find who the last slaveholder was.
Yeah.
So there's no clear cut way to do it. You just know to look for certain things and do certain methodologies. But I would never tell anybody that they're doing it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. It's just because people are they have different approaches to tackling it. Yeah. So I guess one of the main methodologies would be to at least try to research that person back to the 1870 census. Mm-hmm. And then my thing is now I look in the neighborhood. I will scroll images. If it's not obvious who the last slaveholder may have been, try to find any clues like next door neighbor. Yeah. Say for an example, I had a relative who's in the 1870 census. The surname, there was no white people in the area with that surname. So I started researching his immediate neighbors, who white families who were farmers. So I said, okay, it's possible because as you know, a lot of times, many of our enslaved ancestors, they didn't venture too far away from the farm they had been enslaved on. So a lot of times they stayed in the area because essentially they didn't have anywhere to go. So they had to make a life in freedom now. Essentially in the same area.
Well, that's the world that they knew.
Yeah, that's the world that they do. Yeah. So the neighbor, for this one particular person, the surname was Boyce, but there were no white Boyces in the immediate area. So one of the slave owners, they lived in the area, and I researched the wife, and the wife's maiden name was Boyce.
Yes.
And she ended up being how that particular family member was enslaved there. She had inherited him from her father, and he elected to go in that surname, even though her surname was Bobo. She had married a Bobo, but her main name was Boyce, and this particular enslaved ancestor took the surname Boyce. So you gotta just employ all types of research skills and methodologies, to find the great clue or the clue that would take you over the wall as far as, finding that last slave owner and whatever you have to do, And then I have an easy case where another ancestor, my great-great-grandmother Polly Partee, she was right next door to a white Partee widowed lady, and turns out, her husband was indeed the last slave owner, and they took the surname Partee as well. So you just have to really hone in on your research skills, look for clues in the 1870 census that may help you determine, okay, who was the last enslaver of this person. Yeah.
And your Boyce example is really good because I'm writing an article about dowry slaves.
Okay.
So that's dowry, D-O-W-R-Y. Again, if your ancestors were enslaved, that's something that you're going to have to wrap your head around. Yeah. And basically what the dowry slave was is when a woman or a girl from an enslaving family got married, her parents or parent would give her as part of her marriage dowry enslaved people. And actually, especially in our South Carolina ancestry, I'm finding what I'm calling the Thomas Jefferson effect.
Okay.
Where some of the girls, especially the personal servants that are the dowry slaves, were actually the half sisters of the woman who was, marrying out, kind of taking them with them.
Okay.
And her husband, who was effectively sleeping with his sister-in-law,
Right.
was fathering children.
Wow.
So I see why you named it Thomas Jefferson. That's a great name for it. That's exactly what happened.
For those of you who are familiar with the history, Sally Hemings was Thomas Jefferson's sister-in-law. His wife was her half-sister.
Yep.
So that's
Oh,
why
we got that going on now.
we do three families.
Three different families. We have actually had that going on with the Moses, our fourth great grandfather, and then his more than likely his first wife is the sister to his father's wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because my mom is carrying all this Henderson DNA, and we're trying to figure out why in the world. But she carries the Williams DNA too.
Okay.
I'm like, but you pulling a whole bunch of his wife's stuff too. So I'm like, yeah, more than likely somebody is siblings. Is something going on.
There's something going on. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. Everyone who watches the show and reads my articles knows I'm not a fan of throughlines.
Okay.
But we have actually, through the mistakes that Throughline have made, they've actually led us in the right direction.
Yeah, I read your blog post about that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Once I actually understood where the error was, and kind of weeded out and got people to change their trees, so I was then left with kind of correct trees to compare against. I'm like, okay, baby, you're still showing that you're a Henderson, or it's showing that your mother is still a Henderson. Let me take a look. Let me go back into those deeds. Let me go back into those enslavers' probate records. Oh, look, there's your mother. She was there the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of through lines, I feel what you're saying. I use it for hints and clues.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at the end of the day, what is it? Through lines is what? Artificial intelligence.
It's we're related. It's
right.
the we're related app.
Yeah, it's artificial intelligence. They're using an algorithm, and the algorithm is essentially comparing people's family trees until they find that match, and then they dish out a result. So, yes, there's going to be a plethora of mistakes with through lines. But at the same time, I do use it for, I'll give you an example. There's a case where I have not officially confirmed like a sibling of an ancestor or the parents of an ancestor, but I have the body of circumstantial evidence to argue that this person is either a sibling or a parent.
Right.
But I just don't. I'm not feel comfortable just to saying, okay, this person was indeed. So I have added people in my family tree, and I made an icon that says, "Do not copy."
Which people will ignore.
I'm getting to that. Do not copy. Not confirmed. Or I have one that says DNA theory only. And I'll add it because I want to see if if the program will find matching DNA descendants of that person to help me to kind of build the case with DNA that this person was indeed a sibling or an ancestor. So I do use it in that regards, but like you said, it contains a lot of mistakes because it's essentially a computer algorithm dishing out, so obviously it's going to be a lot of mistakes. So, but you can utilize it to help you find clues to build your case on a particular genealogical situation that you're trying to prove. Right. So, I have a love-hate relationship with throughlines. But I did read your article, and that was, it was really great, that you were able to, solve that puzzle with throughlines, So you just, like genealogy, you just never know what you're gonna find. You just gotta research. True. Yeah,
But like I said, you made and again, you made a really good argument, which is how I kind of use throughlines. It's just really good for providing hints.
Yes. Yeah.
But you still have to do the heavy lifting, and you still have to do the heavy research work. Yeah. And while I'm on the topic, Can I just say that if you have something in your family tree where someone born in 1806 was the mother of someone born in 1794, it's a neat trick if you can do it. But
Look. Let me apologize right now for those that saw me that week. Because when I tell you I was losing my mind, I actually kind of snapped on Facebook. And I'm like, why in the world would you put my grandmother as somebody who was born to somebody after that person was born?
Oh, wow.
When I tell you I was so angry, but I started to figure out because and I don't know if you share your tree with anybody.
Yeah, I do. My tree is public.
Okay, but no, what I mean by like Brian is on my tree. He has access to my tree.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know if you do that, but you need to check your tree for that because people can remove stuff. That's why I was
I see what you're talking about.
Yours is slightly different. And Donnie had a really bad problem with her tree where people that had guests, not editing, not admin privileges.
There was guest privileges. They were able to delete your records.
Oh no! Oh wow!
And it messed my tree up so bad that it put my grandmother as the child of some. My grandmother was born in 1898, but they had somebody born in like 1905 as her mother.
Wow!
And I'm like, what? Just kind of, I kind of freaked out.
But you know what? And something I have realized is that with genealogy, you're going to have to do some critical thinking.
How about that?
And I realized that...
We talk about critical thinking all the time.
Yeah, you're going to have to do some critical thinking. And I realized that some people need help with that. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know.
Right.
There are some aspects of critical thinking I can use myself. But you're going to have to employ some critical thinking. So if a person was born in 1850, and then clearly you got down the person's father as being born in 1842, that's impossible.
It's an 8-year-old.
Right.
It's impossible.
Well, I had a situation too where I got extremely angry. Not extremely angry. I just got upset. One person, she was indeed a DNA match. So I looked on our family tree, and it was another line on my father's side that she was related with. She wasn't related through my father's great grandfather, Bob Ely. So, but she had Bob Ely as her ancestor on her family tree, and her argument was, "Well, I match your father and you all are Ely. So clearly, this confirms that I'm also a descendant of Bob Ely." Because she did have Elys in her family tree, but her Elys were from, I think, Virginia. Okay. She just did a name matching.
Yeah. That's what they do.
She just did a name matching and then just saw, okay, this person is a DNA match. He has Elys. I have Elys. So this is how, Yeah. So, and she added it to her family tree. And mind you, all her family was in Virginia. My family, the immediate generations of my family, in Mississippi. So I wrote her a nice, cordial message. I said, I noticed that you are a DNA match to my father, but it's definitely not on your Ely side. I said, your ancestor was not the son of Big Bob Ely. And I pointed out, I said, you'll note that in the 1880 and 1900 census, all of your family is in Virginia, right? Whereas my family in Mississippi. So there's no way. It's impossible. There's no way that my ancestor could father, two families in states that are 800 miles away at the same time. It's not possible.
Which, and again, learning about and understanding things like centromorgans and SNPs, that also would give an indication. I mean, if, say for instance, this lady and you were only sharing like 3.5 to like 4 cms, that's already automatically telling you that that's going back a couple of generations.
Yeah, that's real.
So we have a question. First, Sherry Tarver wanted to say Melvin, she borrowed that red icon. And then we have a question from Elizabeth Torres. She says, do you have to link your DNA to the tree to get through lines to give you hints on a hypothetical ancestor?
Yes. You definitely have to link your family tree to your DNA account, because through lines will not read, and y'all can verify this for me, Throughlines will not read unlinked trees.
Right.
No.
It would search unlinked trees.
But it doesn't read them.
It doesn't read them. So yeah, you definitely have to attach a family tree to your DNA count. And I implore everybody, if you're comfortable with attaching a family tree to your DNA count, please do so.
Yeah.
Because that will help you and that will help me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That would help us all.
That help us all.
But again, keeping in mind that Ancestry is largely, I call it crowdfunded kind of results. So because so many of us from the old 96th district of South Carolina specifically have built out our trees, there's at least 50 of us with mostly correct, I mean, hardly any of us have 100% correct, but mostly correct trees, well-sourced, well-cited.
Right.
So people who, now newbies, who have ancestry in that part of South Carolina are doing their DNA test. They're only putting 4 or 5 people in, and bam, they're getting common ancestor hints. Bam,
Yeah.
they're getting, they're getting those through lines.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I have this one lady who she doesn't match me DNA wise, but she's popping up on through lines, and she's a Brooks, and she has Peter Brooks. Now, for you don't know this, but originally my great grandmother was owned by Preston Brooks's family.
Okay.
So I'm actually a Brooks. I'm not a Yeldell.
Okay.
Even though that's my family name, we actually have shared DNA with the Brooks, the white Brooks line.
Okay.
But she, in 1870, my great grandmother went by Brooks and had her children listed as Brooks. That's the Brooks she has on her tree. She has Peter Brooks on her tree.
Okay.
She didn't go further because in 1880 his name was now Peter Yeldell.
Oh.
So I've been trying to get in touch with this lady to let her know, we might be related. It may be far down, and that might be why the DNA is not popping up. But you have your Martha Brooks is wrong.
Wrong.
That information is way off and incorrect. And
Did she correct her tree?
She has not even contacted me yet.
Really?
But yet she says on her thing that she researches daily. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna just keep sending you messages because I need to know. And then she's from South Carolina. So, we are understanding that everybody from Edgefield, the 96th district, is related. It's just that simple. And there's no doubt in it, in my opinion.
You know what? And I can understand to agree. People see certain things in the, whatever record that's on Ancestry.com, like the censuses and stuff, and it seems like it's a fit. And then they get excited because I've just taken my family tree back another generation. I think I'm being ready to take my family tree back another generation, and they get excited. And they want to believe that, okay, this is them. I know this is them. And then, but once they do more in-depth research, they'll find out.
You'll find that it's not
It's
right.
not them. I mean,
Right.
I think in genealogy we're all gonna make some mistakes.
Of course.
I have made several mistakes where I have concluded certain things, and then I went back and found other good documents that really gave me a huge clue and was able to I made the wrong assertion here. And just like in my last blog post, the genealogy blog post, I talked about how I had assumed one thing,
Right.
and now I have the evidence to show that something else was taking place. So you just have to keep searching and keep collecting that evidence. Just don't see one document and it looks like it fits within your family, and then make a conclusion that this is your people too.
Right.
You're gonna end up traveling down the wrong road. You just got to keep researching to confirm and verify.
Right. And
I
that's
tell people all the
exactly
time.
what she did.
Yeah,
Well,
verify.
Right.
That's how Donnie and I actually met online.
Really?
I was still living in England at the time. Donnie was just outside of DC. I had written this blog post about my 2 times great grandmother called Emily Peterson. Now, there were 2 Emily Petersons in Edgefield in the same town, and there was like 18 months difference between the 2. Only one of them was going to be my 2 times grandmother. The other one was going to, I knew the other one was going to be a family relation, but wasn't going to be my direct line. And I spent a year. Like I said, I wrote a blog post going, I don't know which one of these 2 women is my actual ancestor and who's the family member. And eventually was able to work it out. Thankfully worked it out correctly. But it's, again, things like naming conventions are really, really important clues.
Yeah.
And it does give us pause, because again, we have an ancestral family called Brunson. For whatever reason, if they had a girl, her name was Carrie.
Oh, okay.
Every single, so you can imagine there's 10 kids. All of them, if they have a daughter, and from the male down, they had a Carrie. So whenever we come across a new Carrie Brunson, we have to really sit there and go, which
after we scratch our heads and be like, oh my God,
not another Carrie.
it's a Carrie in every generation. It's a Carrie Brunson in every generation, and you looking at her like, and then not only is it a Carrie in every generation, they could be the same family, a brother and a sister, who had a set of kids, and both of their children name was Carrie, born both at the same time. And both of them married into another family. And you trying to figure out which Carrie married into which family.
Especially if you open up the 1870s census, you have 10 Brunson households living next to each other. And
every last one of them
Carrie.
Every last one of them got a Carrie.
So then that's when you have to start adding people to the trees. You still have to try to find their death records, their marriage. Well, South Carolina marriage records aren't very useful in that.
Oh no, that's
because Virginia, they will give you the names of at least one parent, if not both of them.
Right.
South Carolina, no,
they don't give you anything.
So you need those death certificates, you need those obituaries if they had them.
Yes, and I love North Carolina research too. I mean, do y'all have research? I think North Carolina is one of the best. That's just my personal opinion. As far as finding, they have cohabitation records that list the parents.
Yeah.
All of their death certificates are online.
I wish my family would let me.
They had marriage bonds.
They have marriage bonds.
Wow. See, that the part that I researched though, they just won't leave Edgefield.
Oh, really? Okay.
I can't get out of there.
Well, Mississippi is the same way. I think Mississippi is very hard to research online.
You have to get there.
Yeah, you have to get there.
You have to get there.
You have to
I can
get
believe
there.
that.
Well, I think for South Carolina, where it gets easier is when you can start making connections, because they all go back to Virginia. Even if they went from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, or straight from Virginia to South Carolina. For us, all roads go back to Virginia.
All of them. Yeah. For me, I'm a mixture because I'm from Mississippi, as you probably can tell with my accent that I'm proud of. And the immediate generations of my family are all from Mississippi up until my great and great grandparents. They were part of that domestic slave trade from the upper South down to the deep South. So once I get back 4 or 5 generations, my family is from South Carolina, Virginia, all of those states in the upper.
You have in Edgefield. You have people in Edgefield, don't you?
Abbeville. Yeah.
It's all the same.
It's all the same.
It really is. It's all the same spot.
Right.
My mom shares with somebody for you.
Really?
We talked about it briefly. But
okay, we need to follow up on that.
Oh my God. You have no idea. But my mom shared. I don't think it was with your father. You said, because it's 3 different people that it's some DNA, but we'll get into it. But Abbeville, Edgefield, Saluda, Newberry, well not Saluda, but Abbeville, Edgefield, Newberry, Lawrence.
Oh yeah,
that was all one big thing.
Yeah.
So because during that time period, that's why we have the DNA thing, the DNA project, because at one point that was one big landmass.
Yeah.
And all of our families lived on it.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of them moving, lines was just drawn between their houses.
Right.
And so now, when originally they were in the 96, now you got half of them in Abbeville, another half in Newberry, another, and they're all over the place. So yeah, you probably related to us too.
Yeah, and then you brought up a good point with genealogy. You definitely have to study when the county was formed.
Lord have mercy.
You have to. Or, there'll be certain situations where a county was formed after slavery.
Yes.
And then you would think that your family was in this particular county.
Yes.
And then they were actually, and then you actually find them in another county and thought they had moved. Well, they didn't go nowhere. Right. The county boundary, were changed. So you definitely, that's a good point. You definitely have to research the county. learn the history of the county to see when
sure.
it was formed, what other counties it was formed from. So, you can direct your research into those counties as well, if you're trying to find, your family,
Right.
so.
You have to do that.
Yeah.
And you'd also have to learn a lot about history,
Yes.
especially how that colony was formed. Because Donnie and I have spoken about this a lot. I couldn't understand why I was getting such strong matches in the Caribbean. Because as far as I was concerned, none of my ancestors came from there. But then I learned about how how the Carolina territory itself, that's both now North and South, got formed. And you have people like the Bulls and Middletons and Izzards all coming from Barbados, bringing hundreds of enslaved people with them in Charleston.
Okay.
And when you start looking at the names of their enslaved people, it's like I call it the proto-Gullah Gucci community, because I don't think that's how they would have seen themselves all the way back then. Clearly, people from 96th District got enslaved people from those, because basically those families were huge slave importers. So they got their population from there and trekked them halfway across South Carolina and popped them in the old 96th.
Yeah, and I think because I'm getting a lot of Caribbean matches on both my father's side and my mother's side, and I don't have a clue. And one match is pretty strong, whereas on a particular chromosome, all of the people that are triangulating on that chromosome are from the Caribbean. And I traced it back to my mother's paternal great grandmother. So, I don't have the documentation, but somebody in her family was brought up from the Caribbean. It's kind of obvious. Yeah. So you're right. Yeah.
So I would actually say that once you start hitting the Carolinas, like in the really late 1600s, early 1700s, if you're showing, it's going to be 50-50. The enslaved people either came from Africa or the Caribbean. It's going to be one of the two. But if you come from the deep South and you're showing Caribbean, probably try to get your ancestry back to
the Carolinas, and then
Carolinas.
yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like Brian said, as far as history is concerned, everybody comes from the East Coast. Technically,
right.
we all come from one of those 13 colonies.
Yes.
And you were saying critical thinking is a necessary thing. Common sense is a necessary thing too. Yeah. Because common sense will let you know, okay, well, no, I'm not from. Oh yeah, my family been in Louisiana since the hundreds. Okay, but it wasn't there.
It wasn't.
Well,
you
actually,
it may have been, but I'm using it as a yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is that if it's not there, then it can't be.
Right.
And you have to know when those things are. I mean, Sheila, she drilled in me. She kept telling me over, Danya, you need to learn your maps. I don't want to learn maps. I don't want to do that. No,
you need
to learn your maps.
Yeah.
You need to learn your map. You need to learn the topography. You need to know what that is. I don't want to do that shit. But, I did it. And now Sheila and Brian had everything to do with my book.
Okay.
And they had even more to do with that first chapter.
Okay.
I'm still mad at Brian for making me write it. But because I had to research it in order to write it. But I'm glad that I did that, because now I know the history of the Carolinas. Forget South Carolina. I know the history of the Carolinas. I give you the dates and this, that, and the other. And it's so funny because when people talk to me about it, they're like, how do you know those dates? I said, blame Brian and Sheila. That's all I said. Blame them. But Miss Torres responded, and she said she made a separate tree. She said a lot. So I'm going to go down. She said that she had some incorrect hints over and over, even when she did it. And she said finally it occurred to her that people had copied her tree. And so Throughlines was getting bad info because it was directing her back to that same person. So she said she's made now, that's the reason I made a separate tree to figure things out, but I changed it to private and unsearchable. But I was thinking maybe I should try to see if Throughlines picks up the corrected one, and
I've got an answer for her.
Yeah, but that's what she needs. Yeah.
So actually, Elizabeth, that's exactly the problem that I was having with Throughlines. People had some seriously jacked up trees. I reached out to everyone that I could find that had really messed up trees and explained where the errors were. I pointed them not only to my tree, but loads of other people's trees so they could get the correct information. But what Krista Cowan from Ancestry suggested, and it actually worked, and it was a brilliant suggestion, was if you don't have the name of a mother and father, just create an empty parent label. So even if you put unknown Jones as the father and just unknown mother, add those labels, and then basically Throughlines will ignore all the other wrong trees, and it will try to start working on the DNA side. Because that completely cleared it up for me.
That's how you got the
Because that Moses Williams thing, you were annoyed? I was furious.
Yeah, we get angry. You just get annoyed. We get completely angry.
Because
we
again,
go off.
Well, you know what? If you had a camera in my house when I'm looking at and reading these people's family trees, you'd be like, "Ooh, I didn't know Melvin had that side to him." It's very, because my thing has always been, I hate incorrect information. And I don't like inaccurate information being passed down.
Right.
Because my thing is, 100 years from now, a whole group of people can be believing this stuff is fact. So, and I'm like, that bothers me. I'm like, no, this is not correct. So I've done the same thing. I've reached out to people. I said, and then, you be cordial, and then I give them references. If you take a look in this census, you will see blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't say, hey, this is wrong, correct it,
Right.
I just, even though that's what I'm saying in my mind.
Right.
I guess before, I didn't really dwell on it, and I didn't really think about it because it didn't impact me. Because those kind of mistakes don't seem to have influenced, what were those things called? DNA circles. DNA circles seem to have been completely driven by DNA, and not by other people's trees, where Throughlines is almost the exact opposite of that. So basically now if people have really messed up trees, and you're even trying to get just decent clues, not confirmed information, but just decent clues from Throughlines, you can't even get that.
Right.
No.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the other thing that we wanted to talk to you about, which was history as a whole. How do you, as a genealogist, now, compare it to Black History Month? Because this is our opening segment, as far as Black History Month is concerned. How did becoming the researcher, like when you thought about history before you started researching as a genealogist, compared to and looking at Black History Month, compared to being a genealogist and looking at Black History Month? So much wrong information is out there, and or just not enough of the information is out there.
Right.
What was the effect for you?
For me, genealogy has had a astounding effect. Well, for one thing, when you get into genealogy, as for me, and I'm sure as for you too as well, you not only just think about, what their names were, where did they live, you kind of start, imagining what their life was like. And then that kind of entices you to read more history books in order to understand what your ancestors, as well as what your enslaved ancestors, had to endure. So it forces you to really understand history more and to realize the strength and resiliency of your ancestors. And you start thinking about, all that they had to endure. And it gives you a greater sense of pride to know that, wow, I descend from a mighty strong people because they had to endure a lot.
Yes.
I have sat on my couch and just kind of ponder, what if I had been like a 15-year-old kid, sold away from my mother and father and never saw them again? That would be devastating. And to realize that, a good majority of our enslaved ancestors had to endure that emotional pain, but yet their lives still went on. And to me, I find that remarkable. They had that kind of strength. So even when, a lot of times, as you know, Black history, we focus on, like Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, the noble people. And that's good. That's fine. But I also, for Black History Month, for me, I still think about my own ancestors.
How about that?
Yeah. And I'm so proud of it, you know? So it has strengthened my, I would say it was strengthened my joy in celebrating Black history, because now I can tell the stories of my ancestors, as well as how they were affected. I personalize history with the names of my own ancestors, as well. Mm-hmm. So that gives me a great sense of strength. And, when you're going through hard times and, you just think about, what? If my ancestors can
my
endure...
times ain't hard.
Right, exactly.
You be like, my times ain't hard.
Get it together, Melvin. You can do this.
Yeah. Wow, that's the same thought I have always had lately with me. And, with my... What it's done for me, it's the reason why, like I was telling you earlier, I created a whole new Facebook page called Today's New Finding Black History, because I personally got tired of talking about the same noble people. I think that there are others out there, and the one thing that researching did for me was allow me to find out that there really are others out there. I mean, Brian has one now that he's working on, who is one of his ancestors. He needs to be in history books. Point blank.
Yeah,
like no cut cards or nothing. This man did stuff in Iowa that needs to be known, and they don't know it. No one knows it. I mean, I have an ancestor who did stuff that needs to be known. I have an uncle that did stuff that needs to be known.
Right.
And these things aren't out there because if they're not known because they're our family, but known because this is the kind of stuff that lifts our children up.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you said that too, because
this is crazy.
I'm gonna share this story with you. It was about 10 years ago, because my niece was she was in I would say 6th or 7th grade, and I had gone home to Mississippi that particular weekend, and so she sat down at the table with me, and she knows that I'm into Black history and genealogy, and she said, "Uncle Melvin, we talking about the Civil War in our history class." I said, "Oh, really?" So I asked her. I said, "Did they mention that over 200,000 African American men fought in the Civil War?" I said, "Did your teacher mention that?" She said, "No." I said, "She didn't mention none about the Black participation in the Civil War, that Black men fought in the Civil War for the Union."
Not in Mississippi.
So yeah, this is a school in Mississippi.
Not in Mississippi.
So she was like, "No." So I told her. I said, "Yeah, well, you have at least 2 ancestors who were soldiers in the Civil War." I kid you not, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. And she said, wait a minute, I'm going to get a tablet. I'm going to get a pencil and paper. I got to write this down. I got to tell my teacher. Yeah. She could relate, her own family to that segment of history. And she could not wait to go back and tell her class and her teacher, number 1, Black people fought in the Civil War.
Right.
Number 1. And number 2, I had a 3rd great grandfather who was with the 59th Regiment.
And it gave her the opportunity to do what white children have been able to do all their life. Yep. They've been able to say, George Washington is my 4th great grandfather. That made a difference.
It made a difference.
It just makes a difference.
It's a psychological thing. It makes a difference in kids.
It does.
Yeah,
it makes an entire difference. So to sit up here and to constantly look at when you or I or Brian are talking and come out your mouth and say, "Oh, you guys are speaking revisionist history." No, darling, you were taught revisionist history.
Right.
All I have to say is,
we don't want to get you upset.
All I have to say is, get a membership and go visit Full 3. I was blown away when I started seeing Revolutionary War service cards for Black men. I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, especially you're talking about North Carolina. A lot of my North Carolina family did. That's how they got their land in places like Warren and Halifax and Northampton counties.
Oh wow, those are my counties too.
They fought.
Wow. Okay.
And then they got the service land as kind of their reward for fighting.
And the younger generation needs to know that.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, within an hour, I must have gone through about 500 service cards of Black men who fought in the Revolution.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So this time has gone. Like, Melvin, you have to come back.
Okay.
You have to.
I'll be glad to come back, and I want to thank you all for inviting me. I'm not a big person on videos and talking and stuff
But see,
because I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit introverted. So, but I don't mind. You know, we can do this again. I don't mind.
You
know.
need to come on one of our vent days.
Because I really wanted to ask you about, because I always like asking guests about strategy questions. Because I think the viewers get a lot about different viewpoints of how to create a really good research strategy. So definitely have to get you back on for that.
Okay.
Well, they did,
okay.
and they did say, and there are other questions, so make sure you get on the link.
Okay.
And that way you'll be able to answer other questions that we may have not been able to get into.
Okay.
But they did state, just to let you know, Brian, they were like, this is great information. So they were very happy with what we were able to talk to the guys about.
Okay.
But yes, you have to come on one of our vent days, because this almost turned into a vent day for me. So again, I want to apologize, but y'all know me. So it was wonderful, but yes, I'm so glad to finally have you on the show, and this was awesome.
Thank you.
You're a great start to Black history.
Thank you.
Great start.
And I applaud you all for what you all are doing. It's a great thing. It's so nice to see different people doing different things to get to show the joy of genealogy.
It's a joy.
To show how genealogy would change your life really.
It really does.
I mean, really, it kind of does change your life.
Oh my God, does it?
That could be another show.
Yeah.
So
how genealogy
that's why
changed my life.
Yeah. So I greatly applaud this and others who are doing things to show. Genealogy is powerful.
Yes, it is.
It's powerful. So let's keep doing it. Let's keep inspiring others to
Do the same thing.
do the same thing.
That's why one of my most popular speaking engagement series is called Discovering My American Identity.
Oh,
Because even though
okay.
I spent the first 20 years of my life living in this country, never felt like an American until I started doing genealogy, and it's like, damn, not only do I have roots in this country, I have back to day one.
Wow, deep roots. Right.
But that's what our African American children need to know.
They need to know that too.
And they don't know that.
No, they don't.
So that's what that's all about. It's about teaching your kid That's how genealogy changes your life.
Yeah.
Because you start to realize, I wasn't just a blob before 1870. I was everything before 1870.
Right.
It was doing my research that taught me that there were over 1,500 African American representatives after the Civil War ended.
Right.
They do not teach Reconstruction, because if they taught Reconstruction, then you'd be teaching some Black American history. You'd see
You'd
that
have to.
you'd see that American history and Black history is melded. It's put together, and that's one of the things that they don't teach it. But you're gonna. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, make the point. Make the point.
I mean, because
you stop. Go ahead. Continue.
And then you're gonna tell me that research that what I'm saying is revision. I'm not teaching revision.
No.
I'm teaching truth.
You're teaching truth.
Well, that's when they get upset with me, because I'm like, I'm sorry, but you were taught the
You were
revised.
taught
Right.
the revised
That's
version.
right.
You
So
were
let us
taught
educate
that.
you on what really happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 3 minutes left.
Okay. Okay.
But it's. I don't know. I get so passionate about. I'm very passionate about this. I'm pressed for kids to do it. I'm pressed for children to learn about it. I did a challenge. You know how Facebook gives you your memories? And I did a challenge, and I'm going to do that challenge again right now to you guys, for myself, to the genealogists that are watching, to those who are watching. I challenge every genealogist to go to at least one school and talk.
That's a good idea.
I do. I challenge that, because if we do that, it starts letting not just our children know, but other children of other race need to know too. Because
Right.
I don't need for Sally to think that you're better than my child simply because of your race.
Right.
You think that you're doing all of this because your race supposedly did all of these things, when your stuff couldn't have been done without my grandfather having, or my great grandfather, or what have you, doing his part.
Right.
There was a part that was played in it, and those are the things that's not being taught.
Right.
That part that was played.
And that was omitted from the history book.
How about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. If there are any teachers, who are logged on, give your students a genealogy project.
Yeah,
Give them a genealogy project.
yeah, those things
Yeah.
are something else. Those are dangerous.
Yeah.
Genealogy projects are dangerous.
Okay. Okay.
But again, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Okay. Thank you
Yes.
for having me.
Yes,
I
yes.
had fun.
So next week, we're going to talk about next week's show?
I'll leave that to you.
What is next week? I thought that was Shelley. That's Shelley, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Sorry. So next week we're going to be joined 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Shelley Murphy, and she's going to be telling us and talking about a big project that's going on with the University of Virginia. It involves finding the descendants of the people that were enslaved at the University of
That's
Virginia.
excellent.
Yeah, that's going to be great. That's
Way
gonna
to
be
go,
a great
Shelley.
show. Yes, that's going to be a great show. So, okay, guys, we're back and we're coming back strong. Black History Month is starting. Thank you for coming in again, Melvin. Get ready, guys, because we're doing stuff that most people don't talk about. We're determined to teach more Black history. So, once again, I'm Danya.
I'm Brian. Thank you very much for spending your Sunday with us.
And you guys have a great, great day.